Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our webinar about harvesting the low-hanging fruit in retail stores. My name is Miriam Cioratto, I am the marketing manager for Energis and today I will be the moderator for the webinar. During this webinar, we will have two expert speakers sharing their knowledge and information about this hot topic. They are Dieter Schallenbergh, Commercial Director for Energies, and OGUZ Kiranlar, Energy Engineer and Product Manager in Energis. Energis is an energy efficiency software company with a strong experience in retail sector, offering solutions to measure energy consumption, monitor energy efficiency, and do ESG reporting. Our webinar is scheduled to take no more than 45 minutes, and I would like now to give you a bit explanation about the platform we are using. In fact, on the right side of your screen, on the bottom, you should see a bar with polls, questions, and the chat. For all the questions you may have during the webinar, please use the question tab to write it there, and we will tackle them during the Q&A session. In case not all the questions can be replied during the Q&A, we will tackle them via email shortly after. Then I see more people coming, so welcome everyone. Concerning the audio infrastructure, I know to see if for everyone is in place, so just in case you cannot hear me or see me well, write in the question tab. Concerning the chat, I will use it just for general information. And as a little last check, I like to know if also the poll is in place for everyone. In fact, I just published a test poll. You should see a little red notification on the right side of your screen on the bottom. So if you just click on it, complete it, I can know it that everyone is in place. Let me see. Okay. I see votes coming. Perfect. It's working good. Welcome everyone, welcome to our webinar. Again, I repeat myself, for all the questions you may have during the webinar, write in the questions tab and we will tackle them during the Q&A. And just in case you cannot hear me or see me, write in the question box, I will know it and I will fix for you. It's 11:03, we can wait another minute and then we can start to dive in our webinar. Good morning, everyone. I see more people entering in the room. Welcome. We are about to start in less than 30 seconds. Okay. It's now 11:04. I think we can start. And now I will hand over my colleague Dieter that introduced the presentation for today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Miriam. So first of all, welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for joining and for your interest in the topic of which we will be sharing today, which is focused on the low-hanging fruit with terms of energy savings, of course, so it's related to energy, harvesting those low-hanging fruits in the retail stores. And we will present 3 different use cases of immediate financial savings in this context. What does it mean, harvesting the low-hanging fruit? Well, there are 4 different chapters in this webinar, which will take no more than 45 minutes in total. First is how can you use the energy data that you already have, which will be a very short topic. Second, we will go into these 3 use cases of immediate financial savings. Third, they will be put into proof through a demo that will be given by my colleague OGUZ. And next, there will be a Q&A, which is scheduled to take 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the time that is left. During this Q&A, we try to answer all of your questions. But in the event that there would be too many questions to tackle, then we will for sure come back to you at a later stage. We have your registered email accounts with which you entered. So we will come back with an answer to your questions through email or a separate video call if you prefer. How can you use the energy data that you already have? Well, in fact, this is a topic that was answered in that was answered in a previous webinar that we did. How can you leverage that energy data? And the webinar that we did was now approximately 1 month ago. You can still find the recording of this webinar online. We will put the link to that recording in the chat here for in case you have not received it through email from a previous registration, then you can still look at the details of those. Now, how can you use that energy data? We learned in the previous webinar, when we asked the participants of that webinar through a poll question, that for the majority of those people, which are all retailers, in fact, they have still limited or even no access to energy data. Looking at the answers that people gave to our poll, we saw that really half of the audience didn't have any access to energy data, and the other half had some data coming basically from the energy invoices, the bills that they receive, or they have a little bit of data coming from a variety of systems that they have in place, but it's not at all centralized, it's really proliferated over several places. So it is surprising that in today's world still we have so little insight into how we are consuming energy when we are consuming energy. Now, what is the positive side to this? This is something that can be easily fixed. And again, take a look at the webinar from last month, because it explains very well how we manage this. But essentially, we can get your energy consumption data directly from your grid operators or metering companies, any other types of companies that should hold this data, which is the same data on which the invoice billing is done, by the way. So we get it directly from the grid operators or the metering companies. The only thing we need from you is a mandate that we can have access to this data, and we can set up everything in our solution to make it immediately insightful to you, so that you can do benchmarking, compare the different stores' performance, compare the nighttime consumption with the daytime or opening time consumption, etc., etc. So all of that is explained in the previous webinar. As a second question that we asked in this webinar, we also try to understand why people were interested in this previous webinar and how to get the energy data, how to valorize it. It appears that the main reason that people joined our previous webinar was because they wanted to understand how they could reduce costs. So first they want to understand how can I get this data, which we can solve, explained in the previous slide. Second, they wanted to reduce their costs. That was their primary reason. Secondary reason was ESG reporting or things related to ESG, such as reducing your emissions, etc. Also, for this very first driver, the reduction of the costs, energy costs, this is the topic that we will handle during today's webinar. To avoid or to reduce your costs and thereby to avoid overpaying, the first scenario that we will look into, the first use case, is the optimization of contracts. And here we have a question. We have a poll question for you, which I believe has been put live. The question, and I hope you can all find it. If not, in the bottom right corner of your screen, you will find a polls button, and there you will find the question: do you believe your energy contracts are fully optimized? 3 simple possible answers: yes, no, or I don't know. We have a couple questions, a couple answers in already, but not from everyone. So I will wait another minute or so to give everybody the chance to vote. So currently the majority of you are saying that you don't know if the energy contracts are fully optimized. And then there is an equal spread over yes and no, but the majority is saying, I don't know. We are still missing a couple of votes. For the people that don't know where to vote, in the bottom right corner of the screen, you will find a polls button. If you click that button, then you will find the poll question. Okay, the results remain more or less unchanged. We don't have all votes in, but I will continue with the webinar as such. Okay, while I was saying, some other votes came in. In fact, 70%, 67% of people here today are saying that they don't know if their energy contracts are fully optimized. While then 17%, yes, it is fully optimized. 70% no, it is not fully optimized. So quite clearly, we don't really know. For the people that say yes, I really hope that you are right, because we have seen some other realities in daily practice. Let's go further into depth on that. To ensure that your energy contracts are optimized, we developed an e-Power Optimizer. That's the name of this module that we offer. What does this e-Power Optimizer do? Basically, we collect all the contractual information for your energy contracts. These are associated to the meter data that we collect for all of those different stores that you have with these energy contracts. And this e-Power Optimizer will assess all of that data, how you actually consume compared to how your contract is set up. And it will allow you to identify what would be a better tariff, what would be a more appropriate contractual peak power that you have, and suggest the adaptations that you need to make to fit better to the real scenario of each individual store. What is the outcome? You will avoid to pay penalties, and you will also avoid to pay too much by default and thereby avoid all penalties, but in the end still overpay. That is what the e-Power Optimizer will do, and it is explained later in the demo how concretely this works. Now, I'm putting this to proof with a case. We have a retailer here. We have a number of stores for this retailer. It's quite a small retailer. They have not a handful, but let's say a couple handsful of stores. And on this portfolio of stores, they are generating an annual saving, potential annual saving of 33,975, so 34,000 euros, purely through optimization of the contracts. What does it mean? It is changing the peak power that you have contracted, etc., to optimize and to avoid overpaying. Again, the more technical details of how this works will be displayed during the demo. Now, to go into a bit more explanation on this specific case, this 34,000 euro on a small portfolio of stores, it is equivalent to the first 18 months of cost of our solution. All the costs collectively in the first 18 months are paid by this first annual saving that you can make immediately on the contractual optimization. Essentially, it means that after the first 8 months of usage, already our solution is fully paid back. And in consecutive years, it will be even faster because the solution is already set up, in fact. So I hope you can see that for a relatively small portfolio, this is a massive saving. And of course, the payback is really, really, really good. This, however, allows you to optimize the costs, which was the first need that was expressed in the previous webinar, optimization of costs. So reduction of costs, in fact. But this doesn't lower your emissions. This doesn't help you to use less energy, to be more efficient, to reduce your emissions and to score better on the ESG. So it is purely a financial saving through an optimization. So also to that lowering of your consumption, we have an answer, and it goes always hand in hand with a good commercial scenario, a good financial scenario as well. Brings us to the second case, the elimination of waste and cash burning anomalies. Also here we have a poll question. Poll question is coming live now, and I will read it to all of you. Do you think it is possible that there has been some forgetfulness in your shops? Meaning that the staff in your shops has forgotten to switch off the lights in case that would not be automated, has forgotten to switch off the heating or the airco installation just before the weekend or a series of holidays, even just before the night, in fact. Do you believe such forgetfulness could have happened, or that equipment that you have could be misconfigured or failing, meaning that the HVAC or something else, a technical installation that is consuming electricity or gas, is over-consuming because it is not working appropriately? Let's see at what results are coming in. So we have a number of votes in, but still not all of you. Currently, the majority of you say yes. These types of forgetfulness, omissions, and or equipment failures occur frequently. We have had nobody so far that said there has been no equipment failures or forgetfulness. And then we have a couple people saying, yes, it happens, but rarely. It is not a daily event. So if the results will be updated with some new votes, I will share. But so far, the result remains quite similar. Yes, this is something that happens frequently, and then a minority of people say it is happening rarely. But nobody so far is saying that equipment failure or forgetfulness never happens. So it means that these problems, realistically, they exist. It is true that equipment is not always behaving as expected, and that the people in the store, the staff that is working in the store, is not always mindful of the things that they need to do before closing up, let's say. And in the end, these are all generating an additional cost for something that you are not getting any benefits of. It speaks for itself. Cooling down the building during the night or heating it up, leaving the lights on has no value whatsoever. So it is wasting cash. It is a cash burning anomaly. How do we overcome this? We have developed an e-guardian. An e-guardian, you can take it quite literally. It is as if there would be somebody looking at your energy consumption the entire day, the entire night, 24/7, 7 days in a row of the week. There is somebody, a virtual person, it's an AI, that is assessing how you are consuming energy. And we have an example here of the eGuardian applied to electricity. In this case, only for the main meter electricity, so the one that is owned by the grid operator. And this eGuardian, what does it realistically do? Looking at the graph, what you see is the blue line. The blue line is your actual energy consumption. This is really what you are consuming. This eGuardian, this knows what you are consuming today, but it also knows what you have consumed over the past months, years. It knows what you have consumed, how you have consumed. And it learns from that, and it makes a model of how you are expected to consume in today's circumstances. And that is the green line. The green line is a model that is predicting your consumption as to today, in real time, predicting your consumption. And if any deviations from that happen, then there can be an alert condition. So the guardian, he will immediately pick up the phone, basically. Of course, he's not picking up the phone, but he's sending you an alert to inform you of the fact that there is an anomaly, a deviation from what is expected. To avoid that you would be over-informed with such alerts, we are putting some safety parameters, which is basically the green area that you see in the back. It is a safety deviation that you can have without you being immediately alerted. Still, however, they can be assessed as overconsumption, which is out of the expected. When there is an excessive deviation, then you will be alerted. And of course, it is up to you to act and to see what can be done to overcome these problems. Where would this excessive consumption come from? In this example, it is the visualization for a single store, but we have an aggregated view for all your stores to follow up the full portfolio in total. But it doesn't really require you to follow up proactively because you are informed through the alerting mechanism as soon as a deviation is detected. Also, because it's an AI model, it's a prediction of how you would consume, the alerts will be much more accurate than if you would just put standard alerting condition. If my consumption is above X kilowatt hour or below, then I want to receive an alert. You will receive much more irrelevant alerts if that would be the case. So relevant alerts at the right time, immediate, because there is this virtual guardian that is following up on your consumption and informing you of any inconsistencies. How does this translate to real life? This is based on an actual customer. It's a customer that is a clothing retailer. They have 300 stores, and they are quite small in size. They are general, let's say, clothing retailer, which the stores are each approximately 600 square meters. So maybe that translates a bit to how your stores are looking. Maybe they are much smaller in size, much bigger, but at least it gives you a perspective on how this was applied. So for this clothing retailer with 300 stores, each of approximately 600 square meters, this was an electricity waste identified on a single store. The single store identified waste for a total of 800 euros per month financially. So 800 euros per month on a single store was identified. And this happens for roughly 8% of the stores for this retailer. 8% of 300 stores are having these types of deviations. Again, I'm speaking of a positive quick payback. The anomalies detected in this entire group of stores, these 300 stores, the savings are representing 5 times the monthly cost of our solution. So having this virtual guardian will pay back himself 5 times, at least in the scenario of this customer. And you could be similar, but this is, of course, to be assessed. So far we have learned how we can optimize our costs through the contract, which only has a financial impact, but a significant financial impact. Then we have learned how we can reduce or at least identify where we are over-consuming and then avoid that overconsumption, which will generate a saving, but also an actual reduction of your energy consumption. Thereby, you will be scoring better in your carbon reporting. Thirdly, we are also looking at the detection of water leaks. And you might consider water for us is not really that important because we are not consuming water for our activities. However, every building is consuming water in one way or another. And even if it's just for a toilet, a small kitchen area, the faucets that are being used by the cleaning staff to maintain your stores, even there, you will see that there could be major problems. How does this work? Detection of water leaks. Again, it's this virtual guardian, our e-guardian, that is up night and day to monitor what you are doing. It is detecting water leakages. It is monitoring the water flows, the costs, and generating alerts accordingly. It gives you a place to centralize your facility management activities, at least for the part that where maintenance should be done or repairs should be done for these to fix these leakages. They can be added to our solution. It allows you to identify unexpected usage and or leaks, and thereby also reduce the time that you spend on analysis and monitoring. Because again, it's this guardian that is doing it. You can analyze yourself, but the guardian will inform you if there is any deviation. The graph that we are looking at here, what does it say? The graph, if you would use, this is a commercial building. It's a small commercial building that is not using water for its main activities. In this single building, if you would look at the water consumption in total for a full day, you would not be able to detect any leakage because the leakage is relatively small compared to the total consumption of water, that it is impossible to detect it visually from the consumption graph. However, what we do is we apply a minimum night flow. Simply put, it is looking at the consumption of water when there is no activity in your building or in your store. And there we identify what is the minimum usage, and there we alert or identify when there is deviations from that minimum usage to identify the leakages. In this example, what we see, and it might be a little bit small, but the red area starts on the end of August and it ends at the end of November. So it's a full period of 3 months where there was a certain leakage and an inefficiency on this water consumption for this store. And while water monitoring was already in place, it was not detected that this problem existed because of the reason I explained before. If you look at it in the total consumption, you don't notice this deviation. The company in question installed our eGuardian only 2 months after the leakage started. The leakage existed only 2 months later. Our eGuardian was installed, and it immediately detected this overconsumption pattern, which has already been ongoing for more than 2 months. In these 2 months, there was a leakage which represented a monthly cost of €1,000. It took them another couple of days to inform the maintenance team and to have the leakage identified and fixed. In total, there was €3,000 lost on this leakage. But the positive side is that this leakage would have continued, again, producing a €1,000 loss every single month of the year, possibly getting larger over time, that I don't know, possibly creating also collateral damage in your building, because of course, water, it can cause structural damage to the building, even if it's just plastering or paintwork or whatsoever that needs to be fixed. So it can be detected really in a couple of hours after the water leak started. But in this case, it was detected much later because the eGuardian was only installed at a later time. However, that proves that just by visual inspection of staff running through the store, working there on a daily basis, they have not been able to identify the fact that there was a leakage by sound, by visual inspection, for a period of just a little bit more than 2 months. So it's safe to say that it would have not been detected for a very, very long time, and that the leakage would have continued if not for our eGuardian. And that brings us to the demo. If you have any questions, feel free to put them to the questions tab in our platform, but we will handle all the questions at the end during the Q&A. For the demo, I will pass on the word to my colleague, OGUZ.
Hello, everyone. This is Oz. So, as Miriam mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, I'm the product manager at Energis Cloud and also an energy engineer by background. So, all what Dieter has been describing around this eGuardian and the Power Optimizer, I would like to show them in Energis Cloud, which is an digital solution where all these data-driven low-hanging fruit opportunities are taking place. It will be good to look at it via the screen, which I will share with you, and see how they're actually working in some demo cases. So for that, I'm quickly sharing my screen. And right after, I'm going to my web browser to a demo at energis.cloud, which I will log in, and I will be seeing these applications actually working. So the ones that we'll be focusing on, eGuardian and ePower Optimizer, are in fact some efficiency apps that we have. But as Dieter mentioned earlier, previously we had one more webinar on which we discussed about how you are getting your energy data in so that we can get this type of efficiency opportunities. So the first thing that had done before actually was explaining how we can collect the data from all these resources, data resources, where this energy data is positioned and they have to be centralized. Then the first, let's say, line of applications to use are checking if the data availability is there. What is my portfolio doing, site doing? This is the first line of information that we want. Only after then, we are talking about, now that we have the data, let's make use of this data in order to gain some efficiencies. That's the positioning that we have today. And there are two approaches on how you can get financial savings out of your energy bill. The first one is the Power Optimizer is the description of it in here, to use the energy as you need, but pay less of an amount. So get it cheaper somehow. And optimizing your contract conditions with your energy supplier is one way of doing it so. And we will dive into that. And the eGuardian part, which is touching the point of decreasing the energy consumption of the water consumption, is about, even if the unit price of the energy that I pay would remain the same, by decreasing the amount of kilowatt hours, cubic meters of water, I can still reach the financial savings. So the first approach, Power Optimizer, let's look at it, how it goes. So when we talk about power optimization here, we need to consider that for every energy bill that we are paying, there are certain rules that define the final price that we have to pay. It's can be in every country the rules can be different, but in the end they are based on a rule. And what we do as a general principle here is that we are looking into, or the system, the algorithm itself, in fact, is looking into your past usage of energy, how much peak powers you are using, what is your profile of consumption looks like. And not only for one store, for 1,000 stores or so multiple stores. And based on that, it is suggesting you a better contract condition, such as a better subscribed power or other contract inputs that you might use to decrease your unit price of energy. And the idea is that once the system gives you, in this case, we can see a recommended power, and you go to your energy supplier and request that better power that fits to your utilization, then you will be getting savings. And as Dieter mentioned, in this case, the savings can be surprising you. We are talking about tens of thousands of euros for 100 sites, more or less, on an average non-optimized, let's say, portfolio of stores. So in this particular case that I will focus on right now is an example from France. How does the system work? In fact, what I see here is that from my past data, from these resources of the data, I am checking how much contracted power I have. So that's a price that I pay. The more contracted power I have, the more I will pay to my energy supplier. But maybe if my actual consumption that you see in here, if my actual consumption is way below that, I am paying for nothing. I am paying for the capacity which I'm not using. Alternatively, and you can see it in this Lyon one, if my contracted power is 700 in this case, but I exceed it too often during the year, then in every exceeding moment, I am paying a penalty. And therefore, if I, in this case, would increase my contracted power, I would pay a bit more upfront, or contractually, I would a bit pay more, but I would save from not paying penalties. And let's dive into one specific example here that shows me a bit more visually on one particular case, how it looks like. Making the right optimum selection of not paying too much penalties, but not paying too much for the excessive capacity that I do not use is the work of Energis cloud algorithms and the energy data here. Especially to be able to do it for an entire portfolio. Maybe one could look at that on an Excel one by one, and one store, one day type of timing would give a result, but to be able to do it in an automatic and scaled way is something that Energis Cloud comes in and, let's say, shows powerful. That's, in general, the first, let's say, way of managing the cost element of quick win for financial saving. I will come back to my first screen to look at another app that we have in here, and it is the eGuardian one. So this is the one, like Dieter explained before. If there are forgetfulnesses, if there are inefficiencies due to the operational cases in a store, then we could, in fact, create an expected behavior of how that space should be consuming energy. Because now we have the data for a while in the system, and by analyzing this data, we can actually say you should be around this range of consumption on a given time. What happens if you don't? And we can see it in here. So if you look at this graph, I have two lines that are more or less coming in the same line. One of them is my expected consumption, and the other one is my actual consumption. And in the bar that you see in here, where it is a bit more darker red, more opaque red, I have a tunnel in which I am following my expected consumption. And I'm saying to the system, if you are a bit higher or if you are a bit higher than my expected consumption, that is okay. I do not want to send an alert to you every kilowatt hour, every little exceeding of that expected consumption. But if you start to deviate too much from the expected consumption, and you see it in here, how the darker blue line is exceeding the lighter blue line at this point, and this is going for a while already, then this is the moment the system should be sending an alert to the responsible person to say that something is going wrong. And important point here is that if our experience shows that if the responsible to react to an alert receives too many alerts, those alerts will be unimportant, so they will not be reacted. So even though system codes something, nobody will be reacting. If the system does not give you any alert of overconsumption, then you lost visibility. And this AI part, so this expected consumption concept here is making sure that you are alerted in the right moments. So any alert that you receive to your email or other communication channels is an important one. That's an optimization that the AI is doing in here. And next to that, what we report on is also for a given period of time that you did not react to the alerts, or we are showing you how much waste is ongoing. So the 2,500 euros that I see here is my potential saving of cutting it off. If I continue not reacting to this overconsumption, I do not find a measure to put it down to its expected values, this number will continue increasing. And that's the way we are managing the alerting system. And finally, the alerts, there can be several focuses on the alerts depending on the usage of the store. Sometimes the night consumption is important and you want to have critical alerts in that moment. Sometimes it's more about the operational hours that matter. Sometimes you expect that your consumption during the operational hours and non-operational hours should decrease. And if it is not the case, then I want to alert. And this type of adjustment, depending on the business needs, is also a part of this eGuardian. And the same concept that we see in here, which example comes from electricity, also quite similarly applies to the water leakages, which we saw in the presentation of Dieter previously, eGuardian Water. So these two apps, to sum up, are, let's say, two quick wins that we wanted to show to you today. And one other announcement that I would like to do in here is that this AI aspect of this eGuardian app in particular is something coming from an R&D project that we have been working on. So to the ones who are more interested in the technicalities of how you are creating an expected consumption by using the historical data, the AI models that we are applying, we will have a specific, more technically oriented, more R&D related webinar in the coming weeks, and that will be communicated to you. So I would like to mention that whoever is interested further in the technicalities, there is an interesting digital event coming soon. So with this, I will close from my end how Energis clouds do the job to give some financial savings, and we'll turn back to my colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Huz. Thank you for the demo. I hope it was interesting for everyone. And you may be also interested in knowing that this is a series of webinars about retail sector. And in fact, on the 7th of June, we will have our upcoming webinar with our partner Sedico about invoice verification. And I'm leaving here in the chat the link to subscribe to it, so you know where to find all the informations. And for sure, you're more than welcome to follow our LinkedIn page, where you will find all the information about the company and upcoming webinars as soon as the dates are confirmed. Additionally, before we dive in the Q&A session, I would like to inform you that we will receive right before the finish of the webinar a link in this chat about completing a short survey that just requires a few minutes of your time, but it's a survey about the webinar you're attending, and your feedback is really precious for us, so you know how to improve it for the future. And let me just share here my slide so you can have the details of our speakers. Really feel free to contact them also after this webinar via phone, direct message on LinkedIn. They will be more than happy to reply to all your questions. And I think 11:44, we can dive to reply to some questions that came via the question tab. And let's see which kind of interesting questions came.
And perhaps quickly before diving into those questions, just for clarification, because we announced two separate webinars directly after each other. The one that was announced by my colleague OGUZ comes from a very technical perspective. So everybody here that would be really energy manager from a more technical approach would, I assume, be very interested in that topic and is more than welcome to join. For people that are more interested in the retail domain in specific, that webinar will probably not be to your interest, but the one that we have just presented on the screen, and Miriam can go back to that slide for a moment, which will take place on the 7th of June, is really focused on retail. And in fact, it goes further into the topics that we have already discussed, because so far we have learned how we can valorize the energy data that already exists. We have learned how to optimize our contracts to avoid overpaying and how to reduce our actual consumption, which is also leading to a financial saving. But it's not only the contracts that can be optimized. In the next session on the 7th of June, we will learn that there is also inconsistencies in the way that you or we are invoiced by the energy providers. And also their savings can be generated, but that is for the 7th of June. So don't hesitate to subscribe. And with that, I will be more than happy to go to the questions, to the Q&A.
Looking into the questions, I see one technical question that came, so I feel free to take it up. So the question goes as, how easy it is to integrate the e-power optimizer solution with an existing energy management system? So that's a quite good question, because indeed some of you might already be using a digital solution that you put all your energy data together, and one particular element here becomes interesting to you. And there I would like to say that first of all, if you were to considering changing your entire energy management solution into Energis Cloud, that will be feasible via our migration process, which means, in a very nutshell, copy paste what you have somewhere else, put it in Energis Cloud, then all the applications would be available. Or in other way, for a particular case, you want to use one of the applications that we have, you could also use the Energis Open API in order to connect your data so that the Power Optimizer gets all the information that you have, that it needs to provide you, and you maintain your power optimization processes via Energis Cloud. So we are free when it comes to how to use Energis Cloud. As long as there is the data, we have all the capabilities to put it in place to make it run.
Okay, thank you. I would like to take a second question. So somebody asked, can the Energis Cloud eGuardian solution be integrated with other energy management systems, or does it require a separate installation? In fact, Energis Cloud is a fully cloud-based system, so it doesn't require any physical installation. What we do require is that there is data that is available, and this data can come from the grid operator or metering company, as I explained before, but it could also come from local metering equipment, which is potentially already a local energy management or energy monitoring system that you might have in place. So if you already have, for some of your stores, and it happens quite frequently, for some of your stores, you already have sort of an EMS locally that is collecting data, perhaps allowing to do some export and analysis, we are fully complementary. In fact, Energis Cloud is to be considered an EMS, an energy management software, for a portfolio level management, so for the full group of stores in your company. And other local EMSs that are already in place can be considered a data source to us and are thereby fully complementary. And so they are not redundant, but they are of added value, let's say, in the collection of this data. And thereby we can produce the eGuardian alerts as well based on the data from the other EMS, but it always requires a usage of our solution, of course. That is entirely true. There is another question that I would like to take, but perhaps OGUZ wants to take one first. I'm just looking at you, OGUZ.
From me, it's fine, Dieter. Please continue.
Okay, well, then I will take one more question before we finish up. And the other questions, again, we will come back to you at a later point in time if your question is not answered yet. But somebody asked, why is it difficult to detect excessive water consumption? And why is meter data alone not enough to identify leaks? First of all, meter data alone is enough to identify leaks. So you do not need any special equipment, anything special that is installed, as long as there is meter data coming from your grid operator, in the case that there is a smart meter, or there is a simple device that is installed to measure your water consumption. that is perfectly fine. That is sufficient to detect these leakages. So you do not need any specific other things than the meter data. However, why is it difficult to detect excessive water consumption? It is because if you are just looking at 15-minute or 1-hour consumption values over time, you cannot isolate what is a real consumption, what is to be expected from using toilets, faucets, etc., operational work, compared to what is being used when there is really no people. And leakages, very often they start as something very small, they become a little bit bigger over time, and because it's so gradual, this difference, it is really almost impossible to detect. So with a lot of work, you could isolate the nighttime consumption, thereby be able to detect it yourself. But the value of our eGuardian is, of course, that it informs you immediately, and it doesn't require you to check every single store on a single day or on a single week to do that manual analysis and to spend that time. And that is the major difference. And perhaps quickly to add to that, does it require any special equipment or hardware to be installed? Is a question come from somebody else. No, in fact, it doesn't, as long as there is something already collecting the data, being in most common cases your grid operators or metering companies. And with that, I think we really need to close. We said we will take no more than 45 minutes. We went a little bit over that time. So thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you very much for joining us in the first instance. Thank you to my colleagues OGUZ and Miriam for helping us set up this wonderful webinar. And we are more than looking forward to receiving you again on the 7th of June.
Yeah, I've just put, as above mentioned, the link in the chat for the survey. And again, thank you all for your participation. We are very glad that you have come today. And thank you to my colleagues, OGUZ and Dieter, for their preparation and the precious knowledge you shared today. So I think we can really close today now. Thank you, everyone.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.